Hi, welcome to another episode of The Lab here on Good Cube Kitchen. My name is Yassine Butler and I am your host. And this is the last episode of 2020. This has been an absolutely crazy year. I started a food channel, I started making ice cream every week, and all sorts of things here on The Lab. We've done all sorts of interesting things together. We've made cake, we've made pie, we made skull shaped cheesecake, and caramel corn hot wings. This has been an absolutely ridiculous year, and I want to thank you for joining me in all of the fun. This last episode is going to be one of my favorite recipes. It's another one that came from my college years. It is my spinach lasagna. This was actually so popular that people would request that I make it in the cafeteria for a meal. So let's see how it's made. The first thing we need to do is create our filling. I do the filling in two stages. The first, I'm going to saute some peppers and onions. Now, this is a frozen bag, about 12 ounces of peppers and onions. I've defrosted it and drained off some of the excess liquid, squeezing it, and now I'm going to saute it in some butter. Once it begins to get a little bit of color on those onions, they get a little translucent, a little golden, I'm going to add my seasonings over. I'm going to use some Italian seasoning, which is a combination of basil, thyme, rosemary, and oregano. Then I'm going to pour over some garlic powder. Now, if you want, you can use fresh garlic. I like fresh garlic, but I didn't feel like doing the extra work. And then the last thing you're going to add over is some onion powder. You're just going to take these three, mix them together, and allow the onions to continue to caramelize. Once those cook down and have a little bit of color on the onions, not too deeply caramelized, just a little bit, I'm going to take them out and I'm going to saute my spinach. Because I'm using frozen spinach, I want to drain off the excess liquid so that it sautés, not steams. Going to season it with the same ingredients: salt, onion powder, garlic powder, Italian seasoning. While this is going on, I have a pot of salted water boiling behind me so that I can put my noodles in. Of course, you need a little bit of cayenne pepper to give everything just a little spice. Putting on my noodle according to the box instructions, I'm going to get back to my spinach. Now, I like to let my spinach cook for a good while. We're talking 7 to 10 minutes so that it can get a really good saute. Make sure that you stir your noodles about halfway through the point. Now that my spinach is done, I am going to add it over to the bowl, and in the same pot, I am going to start my Alfredo sauce. Now, Alfredo sauce starts off as a bechamel. To make a bechamel, we've done this before. You use equal parts flour and fat. For this, I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of butter and 2 tablespoons of flour. Once your butter begins to melt, add over your 2 tablespoons of flour. You just want to cook it until it no longer smells like flour. It begins to smell a little bit nutty. Now I'm going to add over my milk in stages, about a cup at a time. In total, I'm going to use about 4 cups of milk because I want mine to be more of a thick consistency. Adding over some garlic powder and a little bit of nutmeg, which is the secret ingredient to a good bechamel, and then just a splash of some dried basil. I'm gonna again add over about a cup of milk, allowing this to get nice and incorporated, and then I'm going to add over my cheese. The last 2 cups of milk are going to be added over as the cheese begins to melt. Adding over 12 ounces of grated Parmigiano Reggiano. This is pre-grated, but I got the kind that doesn't have the non-clumping agent. Got myself there a little bit, but no worries. That's the point of wearing a chef jacket. So you're going to continue to stir. And this is a process where you want to keep stirring because you don't want your cheese to burn. If it's too thick, add over a little bit more milk, about a 1/4 cup at a time. You're going to want to continue to stir this Don't take your eye off of it because cheese burns very quickly. After about 5 minutes of stirring, everything should be nice and melted, and I want it to be this consistency. I want a good cheese stretch because it gives a good foundation and structure to everything. Going to drain our noodles, and now that they are drained, let's go back to our sauce. You see this beautiful cheese stretch? This is going to give a good structure that's going to hold each of the layers together when combined with the mozzarella cheese. Lasagna layering pro tip: always start with a sauce layer. The sauce layer is extremely important because it keeps your bottom layer of noodles from burning. It also makes cleanup much easier because Alfredo sauce on glass or marinara sauce on glass will come up much easier than noodles on glass. You don't want that. So you want to give yourself a good, thorough layer, spreading it all around, making sure that every corner has some Alfredo sauce in it so that when it bakes, you'll kind of have a top layer of brown cheese and a bottom layer of brown cheese. And the combination is just on God. All right, so now you're going to add your layer of noodles. This bottom layer, I only do 4 noodles. It doesn't have to be super perfect. The top layers are going to be more thoroughly filled in. I realized that I forgot to add my ricotta cheese, which for me is an absolute must. If it doesn't have ricotta, I feel like it's not really a lasagna. Gonna add over about 12 ounces of ricotta, stirring in until it's thoroughly combined with my spinach and peppers. I like my spinach first layer to be really thick. I feel like it gives it a good look once you slice it, and it gives it a good amount of firmness. So I'm going to put some heavy globs of the spinach mix, and I'm going to spread it out, starting at the top, working my way down, and then just put a little bit in to fill any gaps in. Once all my gaps are full, I'm going to go ahead and just put noodles. You could put cheese here, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary. I am going to put 5 pieces of lasagna, making sure that it's overlapping so I have a completely sealed layer for this next layer, which is going to start with cheese. Now add more filling, or you could do a cheese and sauce layer. This part is completely up to you. If my pan were a little thicker, I would have done a cheese and sauce layer. But because this pan is so thin and shallow, I'm just going to do cheese and filling. Add some more sauce. You can't have enough Alfredo sauce. It's just not possible. Laying the last layer of lasagna, again going with 5 noodles, and if you have noticed, the layer that is going horizontally, I interchange it. So I start at the bottom, I then add a layer with a horizontal that's at the top, and then at the bottom, and then at the top. That way it's full all the way to the edge each side. Now you really want to take your time and smear your Alfredo all the way over the top so that you get a nice covered layer. That way you don't get any burnt noodles, because burnt noodles, not that great. Burnt cheese, amazing. I'm going to bake this in the oven for about 45 minutes, and then I'm going to pull it out add a layer of mozzarella cheese on, and then put it back in, broil it, and then let it cool for about 45 minutes in the oven. The cooling process in the oven, I think, really helps it to set up perfectly and finish in the oven. I'm going to go into a cold oven and then heat the oven to 400 degrees. After about 45 minutes, I took it out, put a cheese layer on, broiled that cheese layer, and then turned the oven off and let it sit in the oven and cool down for another 45 minutes. In total, an hour and a half in the oven. Isn't she lovely, ladies and gentlemen? This is what a good lasagna should look like. You need to have that crunchy, crispy brownness on the top. People who prefer their lasagna to be white on the top with no burn or crispy marks, I don't know what's wrong with you, but that deep level of caramelization of those fats, the starches, and the proteins is just the best part. The crunchy parts are the best. Now let's see what it looks like when we cut in. Because I allowed it to sit in the oven so long to cool, it set very well. This is actually one of the best first slices I have ever made. I'm super proud of the way that this has come out. Let's look at it up close. That crunch, those layers, they have a good distinctness to them. This is one of my absolute favorite recipes. I love how creamy it is. I love how rich it is. It's one of those things that if you only get one slice, even if you're done, you're probably going back for seconds. The top gets a nice good crunch on it. The spinach isn't overcooked, but it doesn't bring too much of a vegetable flavor to this. Because when it comes down to it, when you're eating comfort food, you're not looking to feel like it's healthy. Adding the spinach is just for a little bit of mental relief. But we all know that this is not health food. I am so excited that I got to share this recipe with you before the end of the year. I can't wait to see you in January. So as always, thank the good Lord for good food and good times. All that good is good cubed.